Hi, I'm Mercury, and today we will be discussing the Hydra. Those who have been viewers of this channel before would know that this means I'm making a new creature sheet. However, I have been redoing my creature sheets entirely. That's one of the reasons why this video took so long to get out. So instead of this, they now look like this. With that little disclaimer out of the way, let's get into the video. So I'm sure that most of us here, if not all, have heard of a Hydra. Now the Hydra we mainly discuss in Tales is called the Lurlinian Hydra, or the Hydra of Lerna, because Lerna was where the Hydra was found. Lerna is modernly eastern Peloponnese. Now if you look at this map, you can see that the Peloponnese is mainly, well, ocean. So that this dragon that is very commonly depicted as a mountainous or even terrestrial dragon is the work of purely modern interpretations. With that, it also was never depicted with legs, at least in mythology. Now the Hydra, and most importantly the killing of it, was one of the 12 labors of Heracles. And well, now if you're gonna kill a Hydra, you have to know what you're capable of. The Hydra was a poisonous as well as venomous. It was said to be so deadly that you would die by breathing the air around it. And the only way to kill a Hydra is by cutting off all of its heads. Now, isn't the whole gimmick that you cut off the head of a Hydra, then two grow in its place? Well, yeah, that's why you have to cauterize the wound. This is why the Hydras are defeated with only a flaming sword of something of the sort. Now, as mentioned earlier, this isn't necessarily the Hydra we see today. I mean, Disney gave us this, a Hydra that not only had legs, but lived in the mountains. D&D is another example of where this legged Hydra came into play. While these are quite different from the Hydra of myth, these are important modern interpretations. This is why I won't be making the Hydra of Lerna, nor will I be making the typical legged Hydra, but both of them. That's right, surprise. This isn't me making one creature, but two of them. We love it when I give myself work for no reason. I will say that my take on both Hydras are pretty simple. Both of them will be in the order Caphuthudrus. Their family are Drachyhydrus and Wormishydra respectively. The thing that makes both the dragons a Hydra is their quick regenerative properties, and specifically the fact that they grow back two heads instead of their one after it being cut off. And all Hydras are either poisonous, venomous, or both. So for these two creatures, I will kind of be doing a more standard basic Hydra, but this video does lay down the groundwork for eventually more Hydra species, which I plan to make and kinda already have. The next step would be to establish the location these hydras are from. The environment plays a big part in many adaptations that creatures develop. Now, the hydra we know and love was from the Lerna swamp, so was an easy one. According to Natural Geographic, a swamp is an area of land permanently saturated or filled with water. Many swamps are even covered by water. There are two main types of swamps: freshwater swamps and saltwater swamps. So now we have to figure out which swamp type the Lerna swamp is. I want to start this with how hard the actual place of Lerna is to research, because the Hydra actually takes over everything. It's kind of funny how I'm struggling to research for a Hydra video because there's too many articles that focus on the Hydra. However, after a while, I did actually find my answer. It would have been a freshwater swamp. Despite depicting its closeness to the ocean, the swamp was said to be made by spring water. Now, with that, there aren't many differences between salt and freshwater swamps in terms of how creatures adapt, which I'm not surprised because even freshwater swamps are still kinda salty. Anyway, swamp and even other wetland animals develop many features such as web feet, long legs, permeable skin, streamlined bodies, echolocation, and whiskers. Now, one thing that I thought would be cool while developing this Hydra was to take inspiration from the actual art of the Hydra. This is an ancient Greek water jug that depicts Heracles and Iolaus slaying the Hydra. Now, this vase was made using black figure technique, which I won't go into detail in this video about how that process works. Let's just say it was a very common practice that led to many different vases being this reddish-orange color with black figures. So I thought it would be fun to draw inspiration from the idea and make my Worm's Hydra's primary colors referenced on this Greek pottery. Now, colors like, say, this black and orange that I'm going to be using is another adaptation of creatures. It's why desert animals are normally dark in color and animals in polar regions are not. So, with this color scheme now set for my Hydra, I've decided to place it in the back barrier salt marsh. Wait, but didn't I just say that the Hydra was found in fresh water? Well, the back barrier salt marshes have a lot of varied levels of salinity, aka saltiness. So this Hydra will live in an area of the back barrier salt marsh that has a lower level of salinity. I felt like it would work because Lerna is so close to an ocean, even though the swamp is made out of spring water, which is why it's fresh. I thought it was kind of fitting, a mix of both worlds. On top of that, the blackberry or salt marsh is often murky water with shade from the trees, would mean that its darker overbelly would actually help it blend in and survive in this region. Now, of course, you can find the creature sheet for my orange-bellied Hydra, which has more information that I didn't go to in this video on the official Phantasticus Tumblr, but I think it's about time we moved on to my next Hydra, or the speckled Hydra. As you will see in just a moment, I decided to pull some of those colors from the pottery onto this Hydra as well. But I did say that we were going to do a legged Hydra, so let's. Now, I wanted to go fairly simple with this Hydra, pretty much a crocodile with multiple heads and legs that a Vogue model would be jealous of.
They tried to put me on the cover of Vogue, but my legs were too long.
So coming from that, speckled hydras live in these thick, dense, foresty, freshwater swamps. Their dens are large boulders that are partially submerged in water. These boulders are carved out by acid, usually by a female hydra that, when dead, the strongest child of the hydra will inherit the den. Now, of course, with living in a dense forested marsh, I'm gonna take the obvious answer and I'm making them green. One of the more interesting parts about this Hydra is the fact that they've got a super soft underbelly, scales at its lower neck, which makes its head the easiest part of its body to cut off. It's a trap of sort. But even then, it's not that easy when you note that speckled hydras are extremely venomous and poisonous. Unlike a snake, however, their fangs don't inject venom. Instead, their venom sac connects to the lower part of their salivatory glands, making their saliva entirely venomous. Now, this is where we go into the second reason why I'm making two hydras instead of one. Speckled hydras aren't born with multiple heads, and only their crown head is developed. At 2 years old, their secondary heads start developing, and around 4, these heads are fully functioning. This is what leads into my more broad Hydra lore for Phantasticus. There were 2 suborders of Hydra, the ones with and without a crown head. Hydras with a crown head have one primary head. It usually has the largest horns. It's sometimes darker in color than the other heads. It's considered its main head. These Hydras, while they have separate heads, they share one conscious. This can cause a delayed processing and slower reaction times between the heads, as it takes nerves longer to send messages to all of them. Crown hydras are seen to develop in 2 different ways. They develop about 2 to 4 heads, except for their crown head, a bit before they reach maturity, like the speckled hydra, or they are born with their crown head, and the only reason why they would have more than one head is because someone cut off their crown head. Now, these extra heads also often die after a few months, like a temporary limb used to help fighting, but because it can take a lot of energy to host, the head soon dies off. This is only seen with the Hydra with a crown. Now, the Hydras that lack a crown, like my orange-bellied Hydra, have multiple brains, and while they are all connected to the same body, they don't necessarily experience the same thing. It's been shown that these hydras have different dietary preferences, and even some of them develop things like blindness or other conditions that the hydras do not share. Even though it's all going to the same body, some of these Hydra heads have been seen to only eat plants, while others only consume meat. They are also often seen sharing food, even though they don't necessarily have to. But with that fascinating tidbit about the Hydras, I would say that this video is now coming to an end. Now, I know it's been a while since I posted last time, but I do have plans for the near future. I would recommend checking out my Tumblr, especially the Fantasticus blog that I mentioned earlier, where you can get all of my official creature sheets and more Fantasticus content. I also post on there a lot more frequently because I don't have to spend hours writing and editing. You can also check out my Discord server, also linked below, where you will get updates on all my projects, sneak peeks for upcoming videos like this one, and maybe even contribute to one. You get to see a lot of my personal art, I forget to post to Tumblr, and get to yell at me for not making videos. And with that, I bid you all adieu, and I hope my bird shall develop my next video soon.